Welcome back to Miss Burkhart's math class. Make sure you have your notes in front of you and something to write with so you can follow along and write your notes as you watch the video. Pause the video if you need to catch up with your notes, and also make sure you're going back to rewind the video for any parts that you need to watch again to make sure you fully understand. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about SOL Standard 6.7b, which requires you to solve problems, including practical problems, involving circumference and area of circles. So in today's lesson, you're going to be able to learn how to calculate the circumference and area of a circle using the formulas, the parts of a circle, and the Desmos calculator. So let's get started. So let's take a look at our circle here. And we've gone over this, but remember that the circumference is the distance around, is the length, if you will, of the circle around the outside. That's the circumference. Kind of sounds like circle, circumference. The diameter is the distance of one side of the circle to the other side through the center, through the longest part. So the diameter is all the way across, but then halfway across from the center to the outside is called the radius, right here, the distance from this side. Now you'll notice that two of the radii make up the entire diameter. So the distance from the center to one edge is called the radius. From the center to another edge is the radius, same distance. So together they make up the diameter. Now the area of a circle is the space inside. It's actually filled in with squares, just like when you do with a rectangle. But so the area is the distance, is the space inside, whereas the circumference is the distance just around the edge of the circle, around the circle itself. The area is measuring the space inside. And actually, it's measuring how many squares there are. And you think, but how in the world? Because it's not a complete square. That's true, but we'll get into that. So speaking of the radius versus the diameter, let's take a look at that a little bit more detail. So here's my diameter through the center. We'll consider this the center. And through the center, this is the distance. Let's say the diameter was 10 units. So what would the radius be? So remember, the radius is half of that because that's just from the distance from the center to one side. So if all the way across was 10, how much would the radius be? Hopefully you said 5, right? Because if one of those is 5 from here to here, and the other one is 5, that would make up a total of 10. So the radius would then equal 5 units. Well, what if we were given the radius instead? So let's say one of the distance from the center to the edge was, so we'll say this one here, right? From here to here, the red one is, let's call it 3. So if the radius was 3, what is the diameter? So if the radius was 3, what would the diameter be? Did you say 6? Yes, because if this radius is 6, and then this radius is 3, and then this one is 3, together all the way across, it would make 6. Okay? So now let's apply that knowledge to help us solve the circumference. We'll start with circumference. So we have two formulas, actually, to find the circumference. One, you use the diameter. So notice D is going to represent the diameter. R stands for the radius. And pi, for this year, we're going to always use 3.14. That is rounded. Remember the other day, we investigated in how we found pi. And we found we measured the circumference of the different circles and divided that by the diameter of the circle. It ended up being around pi. Now, if we did it like more accurately, it would end up being pi, and those digits continue on and on and on. It's a decimal point there. So the diameter was about, well, actually the circumference of the circle is about 3 diameters around plus a little more, which is actually pi. So this is where this formula comes from. The circumference is 3, the pi, 3 and a little more of the diameters, multiplying it together. Remember, this means pi times, when I have the things together with no operations, it means multiplication. Pi times the diameter. So write that on your paper as well. And then this one says 2 times pi times the radius. Well, why are there 2 different ones? Let's look. Remember, we talked about the radius. 2 of the radii, right? Back here, 2 of the radii, make up 1 diameter. So you see how these are the same formula. 2 times the radius is the diameter, and then you just multiply that by pi. Let's try some examples. So in this first one, I want you to identify the parts first. So pi is going to be 3.14. What is our diameter in this one? Diameter is all the way across. And you can think of it, diameter is a little bit longer of a word than radius, so diameter is all the way across. Radius is just part of the way, halfway. So the diameter is 4, and therefore, what would the radius be? If all the way across is 4, what's just half of that? 2. Now, let's put that into our formula. Always write the formula first. I've written it here for you. Circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. So now, in place of pi, what are we using? 3.14. So write this down on your paper. Multiply it, and I'm going to use the parentheses this time, times the diameter. What's our diameter? 4. Now you get to use the calculator. So if we go to our Desmos calculator, I'm just going to put in 3.14 times 4. So I'm just going to put that into my calculator. 3.14 times the diameter, which was 4, and there's my answer, 12 and 5600. So let's put that into our problem, 12.56. And notice that says meters because it's just the circumference. It's measuring the distance around the circle. And so that's a line. So that would just be meters. Now let's try it if we have the radius. Here's our formula. Always write the formula first. Circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. Let's identify. 3.14 is pi. Diameter. Well, they didn't give us the diameter, but they did give us the radius, which is 11. So how do I find the diameter? Well, remember, if the radius 1/2 is 11, then the other half would what? Be what? Also 11. So we're going to write 11. So then what is the diameter? What is all the way across? That would be 2 times the radius, or 22 units. Now let's put this into our equation. So we have 2 times pi times the radius. So I'm going to say 2 times, and what's pi? 3.14. And what's the radius? The radius is 11. Now I'm just going to put all of that into our calculator. 2 times 3.14 times 11. Okay, so let me clear this. 2 times 3.14 times 11. And what do we get? 69 and 800ths. So let's write that in. 69 and 800ths feet. Sorry, my 6s are not looking great. Now, it is your turn. I want you to try these two. First, identify your parts, pi, the diameter, and the radius, and then put in your formula. You have 2 to choose from, right? I'll start you off on this. Let's use pi times the diameter. All right, maybe use the other one for this one. 2 times pi times the radius. So pause the video, fill in the values for pi and the diameter, or pi and the 2 and the radius. Use your calculator, and then solve it and write your answers here. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so now let's look at the area of circles. So the area formula, again, the area is measuring how many squares, the space inside the circle. So in this case, now the formula is area is equal to pi times the radius squared. Now remember, that does not mean times 2. That means radius times the radius. So I wrote that out for you. Pi times the radius times the radius. That's different than the circumference one that was 2 times pi times the radius. This one's different, and you'll see how. So let's go over these examples. Here we have, let's identify our parts again, right? So pi is going to be 3.14. Our diameter, now they didn't give us the diameter in this one, they gave us the radius, which was 11. But how do I find the diameter? Remember, that's all the way across. So if I extended, this is going to be the radius as well. So if this half is 11, what's this half? Also 11. So then what would be all the way across? 22, right? All right, so now let's put in, we've written our formula, I've written it here for you, pi times the radius squared. So now let's fill in our values. What is pi? 3.14 times, and what's our radius? 11. And we square it to the second power, in other words. Now let's put that into our calculator. So it's going to be 3.14 times 11 squared. Let's clear this. So pi, 3.14. Do not use the pi symbol, pi button, if you have it on your calculator. Just use 3.14 times, and then it was the radius, which was 11. And we wanted to square it. So you can use this button right here. See where it says a to the second power? I can click that, and it will just square my 11. And we get the answer of 379 and 94 hundredths. So let's put that into our thing here, 379 and 94 hundredths. This one, notice that the unit is feet squared. Or you could say it as square feet, because remember, we are filling this in. The area is filled in with squares. All right, now let's try this one. Now they give us the diameter. So let's put our values in, 3.14, and the diameter is 10. Just for fun, let's find the radius here because we need it for this formula, don't we? So if all the way across is 10, what's halfway across? 5, right? Half of 10 is 5. So if this side is 5, then that side is also 5, which of course then makes the whole way across the diameter 10. So our radius is 5. Now let's fill in our values. Pi is 3.14 times our radius, which is 5 that we figured out, and we're going to square that. Now let's put this into our calculator. So we will say let me clear that. We'll put 3.14 times 5, the radius, squared. Hit that square button, and we get 78 and 5/10. 78 and 5/10. And notice it's inches squared, because again, we're finding the area, which is filled in with squared, so square inches. Now it's your turn to try. So remember, the first thing you want to do is write in your formula for the area of a circle. There's only one, so write that in first. Then I want you to identify your parts. Write in the value for pi, the diameter, the radius. Then fill that into your equation, to your formula. Use your calculator to solve it to get your answer. Do that for both of these examples. So pause the video, answer these 2 questions on your paper, and then come back and do the pop-up questions. Well, so to recap, in today's lesson, you learned how to calculate the circumference and area of a circle using the formulas, the parts of a circle, and the Desmos calculator. So great job. Make sure you have your notes in your binder and bring your binder to class, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.